Hello, you're watching the Daily Report for Tuesday, December 14th. Multilateral trade agreements play an essential role in ensuring sustainable growth by offering a solid foundation for broader economic advances. Now, we have more on this reality later on the program after a check on the global pandemic situation with our Kwon So-ah. So, just start us off then.
Sure, Sunny. So Korea has reported a slight decline in COVID-19 cases this Tuesday to 5,567 as of 12 a.m. Now, breaking it down into domestic transmissions and imported cases, that's a little over 5,542 respectively. Now, there has been a slight decline in the capital, Seoul, but there's been an increase, especially in the center of the nation, including in the Chungcheong-do provinces, Daejeon, as well as Sejong City. And if we go over to our graph, we are seeing a decline by 250 cases from the day before. But if we compare the figure to last Monday, it's an on-week surge by 600 cases. And Korea has meanwhile reported its highest ever single-day death toll. 94 people have lost their lives due to COVID-19 in the past day. And the number of patients that are currently in severe or critical condition, that has been above 800 for the entire week. And now we've got another record high for this figure as well, surpassing 900. And if we go over to our vaccination figures, we've got 43 million people now who got at least one COVID-19 vaccination jab, and 41.7 million are considered fully vaccinated. Meanwhile, there's also been almost 14% of the nation's population, or around 7.1 million people, who have received an additional shot. Now let's move over to the figures abroad. There's been an increase by more than 617,000 new cases in the span of 24 hours as of noon Korea time, and more than 6,100 COVID-19 related deaths. And going over to the countries with the highest caseloads. Now, the U.S., which is approaching 51 million cases in total. California here has reintroduced mask mandates, which will start on Wednesday, following suit of New York, which has done since Monday. And then we've got the UK with surging Omicron cases, reporting close to 54,000 new infections in the past day. Meanwhile, South Africa and Netherlands have both reported more than 13,000 new cases, also two countries that have a resurgence of this new variant. And those are the general updates that I have for now, but I'll see you back in a bit. Sunny?
All right, so thank you for now. Right, back on the local front, efforts to boost medical capacity and to prevent infections continue. For more, I have Cho Won-jong here in the studio. Won-jong, welcome back.
Good afternoon.
Right, let's begin with Monday's official launch of the vaccine pass requirement.
So starting on Monday, everyone had to show their vaccination status using QR code or negative PCR test result taken within previous 2 days to access most public facilities, including restaurants, cafes, and a movie theater. Following the end of 1 week grace period, any businesses or individuals who violate these vaccine pass rules will be fined up to around $2,500. However, there was a slight hiccup at the start of the Monday, as the technical difficulties were encountered when using the system. So what happened was, due to overwhelming demand, especially during lunchtime, many users reported connection errors that lasted well into the afternoon. Authorities have released an official statement apologizing for the inconvenience, and said no fines will be imposed on vaccine pass violation that occurred on Monday. But the authorities on Tuesday said work had been carried out to increase the server capacity, and the system is said to be working well as of now.
Well, that is good to know. Won-jong, also on Monday, those aged 18 and above began registering for their additional doses, right?
That is correct. So on Monday, more than 1.6 million people over 18 applied to get their booster shots. Anyone aged 18 to 59 who have been fully vaccinated for more than 3 months can apply for a booster shot. And actual inoculation are set to begin on Wednesday. Now, however, those over 60 do not have to make a separate appointment. Rather, they can simply walk into the nearby hospital or clinic with surplus doses to get their vaccines on the spot. To ramp up booster uptake, the Korean health authorities released more data on the efficacy of booster shots on Monday. Now, according to their analysis, those infected with COVID-19 after getting their booster shots, 91% less likely to develop serious illness compared to unvaccinated people.
Right, I see. Finally, Wonjong, what is the latest with regard to the spread of Omicron here on the domestic front?
So the health authority on Tuesday reported 5 new Omicron the infections, raising the total to 119. Of those, 3 cases were locally transmitted, while 2 were travelers from South Africa and Nigeria. But here's something I would like to point out. According to the health authorities, 1 in 4 people, or 24.4% to be exact, with the confirmed or suspected cases of Omicron variant were asymptomatic. Now, we know that the Omicron variant has a similar incubation period as the highly transmissible Delta variant. The concerns had also been raised, with early studies suggesting that Omicron strain is twice as transmissible as Delta. Now, however, all patients so far had mild symptoms like fever, sore throat, and coughing.
Right. Wonjong, stay with Omicron. Let's now extend our talk to include Soa, who will tell us about some very sad news from the UK, where authorities, I understand, have reported their first Omicron-related fatality, Soa.
Right, Sunny. At least 1 COVID-19 patient in the UK has died with this highly transmissible variant, which is raising alarm bells not only in the country but globally, because according to what we know so far, the Omicron variant has been causing light symptoms only. Now, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who broke the news on Monday local time, said this variant should not be taken lightly.
So I think the idea that this is somehow a milder version of the virus, I think that's something we need to set on one side and just recognise the sheer pace at which it accelerates through the population. So the best thing we can all do is get our boosters.
The country's health authorities are saying the UK is facing a tidal wave of Omicron infections as the novel strain is spreading at a phenomenal rate, with cases doubling every 2 or 3 days. Britain's Health Secretary Sajid Javid said Monday that the Omicron variant now accounts for nearly 44% of all COVID-19 infections in London, adding it would be the dominant strain in the capital within 48 hours. Backing the Prime Minister's words, Javid claimed 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine are not enough, calling on the public to protect themselves with a booster shot. The UK, meanwhile, had detected its first Omicron variant back in late November, and on Monday alone, around 1,500 cases were said to be the Omicron variant. So the total there is already at around 4,700.
Interesting. I mean, speaking of first cases, and China has also reported its first Omicron case on Monday. According to local media on Monday, the traveler from Poland in the city of Tianjin was confirmed with the Omicron variant. The patient was asymptomatic and is currently being treated at a local hospital. And over in Europe, Hungary reported 2 Omicron cases on Monday. Now, both patients did not have a recent history of traveling abroad, suggesting that the variant may be spreading in the community. Now, other European countries like Denmark are also on high alert. Now, this is because the recent test result is showing that more than 3/4 of the recent COVID-19 patients were carrying the Omicron variant. Now, in Norway, let's look at it. The authorities there are saying that the Omicron variant will soon become the country's dominant strain, concerns that are being echoed across the European continent, which is very concerning too.
Right, it is concerning. And against that backdrop, the concerns raised by Wonjong Soa, are authorities here in the country exploring the option perhaps of boosting border controls?
Right, Sunny. If you remember back in around 2 weeks ago, on the 3rd, I believe, this month, that was when the government has implemented a mandatory isolation period of 10 days for people that enter Korea. And that ends on the 16th this month. So this is why officials are saying that they are holding relevant discussions this afternoon. So it is highly likely that this measure will be extended, especially because ever since then we are seeing these rising cases of the Omicron variant here in Korea and abroad.
Right. And so earlier on, you mentioned Korea having like more than 900 patients in severe or critical condition. I understand authorities have also addressed this alarming figure. Could you tell us more?
Right, Sunny. So Park Kyang, an official at the Health Ministry, explained that there are currently 2 main problems in terms of managing patients in serious or critical condition, as well as COVID-19 related fatalities. So first is the transmission of cases among unvaccinated people.
지금 미접종자가 전체적으로
You can see that 92% of all adults aged 18 and over here in Korea have been fully inoculated, which leaves only the remaining 8% who are unvaccinated. This small 8% portion of our population who haven't been vaccinated account for 51.2% of all seriously ill patients and 53.9% of all deaths from COVID-19.
So putting that into perspective, when comparing the proportion of severe or critical cases and deaths, it's 4 times and 5 times higher for unvaccinated patients compared to those that are completely vaccinated. According to PAC, it's the unvaccinated senior population that's decisive in how medical capacity for severely or critically ill patients can be managed or not. The second factor that's posing difficulties in medical response is the rising number of breakthrough cases among senior citizens, with the officials citing the faster than initially expected waning efficacy of vaccines among the elderly. She urgently called on those aged 60 and above to get their booster shots once they have passed 3 months after their full vaccination, which accounts for the majority of elderly in the nation right now. And as of this Tuesday, 37.5% of those aged 60 and above have gotten their 3rd jabs. She also reiterated that the introduction of the vaccine pass system, or rather the extension that we had recently, is also to minimize those infections among the unvaccinated people. With that, PAC also called on elderly people especially to refrain from gatherings such as meeting their families as the year end is coming by, and even going outdoors if they're not unvaccinated.
Right, and on the subject of vaccine verification, so what have officials said about the technical glitches experienced on Monday that Won-jung touched upon earlier?
Right, Sunny. So the government acknowledged that although it had prepared for a sudden surge in the use of the system, especially during lunch and dinner time, the traffic was more than they had expected. So here's a latest remark on the issue by a senior health official.
I would like to apologize for the inconveniences that many citizens and small business owners had to deal with yesterday due to network disruptions. There were far more verification requests than we had anticipated, which led to these service errors. We have added more servers and optimized our systems overnight in cooperation with the KDCA and internet service providers to tackle the traffic surge and server overloads.
And Son added that in case there are any more disruptions from here on that businesses cannot be responsible for, realistically, it'll actually be difficult to find them at this point in regards to the business owners as well as the visitors.
That's right. I mean, around the 12 p.m. and actually lunchtime here, there are still some reports about the technical difficulties using this QR system, but the authorities have responded that the app is still working well. But they rather saying they use the app, the Kuv, Kakao, Toss, Pass instead of neighbor apps, which is very interesting thing too.
I see. Well, we'll have to wait and see then. All right, Won-jung, thank you for that. I'll see you tomorrow. And so thank you for the updates. I'll see you on Wednesday as well.
See you.
President Moon Jae-in met with Anthony Albanese, the head of the opposition Australian Labor Party, in Sydney on this Tuesday. President Moon shared hopes for greater collaboration in high-tech ventures as Seoul and Canberra have now raised their ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Mr. Albanese, for his part, spoke of strengthening cooperation on the common basis of diplomacy and market economy. Meanwhile, later on this Tuesday, President Moon will sit down with members of the Australian business arena to discuss, among many issues, the recent supply chain disruptions. And on the local front, earlier on Monday, Seoul's top economic officials shared government plans to join an extensive Asia-Pacific trade deal that looks to become the most innovative trading arrangement in the region. Our Lee Kyung-eun reports.
To increase its presence in the global market, South Korea is now aiming to join the MEGA Asia-Pacific Free Trade Agreement CPTPP. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi on Monday said the government will prepare its application to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. The pact is a renegotiated version of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, after the U.S. withdrew. Launched in 2018, it involves 11 countries, including Japan, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Mexico. As of 2019, those 11 countries account for some 15% of the total global trade amount and 12.8% of the global GDP. The finance minister said Seoul's push is deemed as being increasingly important as China and Taiwan have both submitted their applications, which it says will contribute to fast-changing economic order in the region. Plus, because China is South Korea's #1 trading partner, Beijing's application itself raises the pact's strategic significance for Seoul. Even without China, the 11 countries already account for more than 24% of South Korea's total volume. The pact will almost eliminate tariffs on agricultural and industrial goods among the member countries. And it will mean more opportunities for small and mid-sized domestic businesses, many of which produce raw materials or half-finished products. But it could also pose a threat to local farmers, as agricultural products are the biggest exported items by the 11 countries. The South Korean government will collect the opinions of the public and hold social discussions involving all interest groups before making the next step. All 11 member countries need to say yes for a country to enter. The UK is also considering joining the pact. Young-eun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Korean economy will expand 4% this year. This is according to the Asian Development Bank, which appears to have maintained the outlook it forecast back in July. Officials there are also holding steady their prediction of a 3.1% growth rate for Korea next year. Exports have been cited as reason for the latest outlook. In fact, Korea's outbound shipments grew 32% on-year back in November to record $60 billion. Meanwhile, the bank has raised its projection for Korean consumer prices to 2.3% in light of escalating energy costs. On the cultural front, Squid Game has secured 3 nominations at the 79th Golden Globes. Our Kim Dami has more.
Squid Game could add to its international success after bagging 3 nominations for the 2022 Golden Globes. It's been nominated for Best Television Series Drama, competing with shows like Lupin, The Morning Show, Pose, and Succession. Lee Jung-jae, who plays the main character in Squid Game, has also been nominated for Best Performance by an Actor in a TV Series.
Best Performance by an Actor in a Television Series, Drama. Brian Cox, Succession. Lee Jung-jae, Squid Game. Billy Porter, Pose. Jeremy Strong, Succession. Omar Sy, Lupin.
Another Squid Game star, Oh Yeong-su, has gotten the nod for Best Support Actor alongside Billy Crudup and Mark Duplass in The Morning Show, Kieran and Culkin in Succession, and Brett Goldstein from Ted Lasso. This is the first time that a Korean drama has been up for the Golden Globes, which is often seen as a crucial bellwether for the upcoming Academy Awards. But the Golden Globes have been clouded by controversy over the lack of diversity in its membership, leading many stars and top studios to boycott this year's event. Squid Game has already seen some recognition of its global success, winning the Best Long-Form TV Series title at the 2021 Gotham Awards last month. The 79th Golden Globes will take place on January 9th. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
Now, for those of you wondering about Squid Game star Oh Yeong-su's professional activities beyond the Netflix series, our Kim Bo-kyung recently met up with him to take a look.
After the actors from the drama achieved global fame, all eyes were on their next career moves, as most of stars were bombarded with so many offers of advertisements and roles in other dramas. One of them was Squid Game's grand game maker Oh Il-nam, played by actor Oh Yeong-su. And this 77-year-old veteran actor chose to return to the stage, where he spent more than 50 years of his life and where he started his career in 1963 as a member of a theater troupe. When asked why he chose a play, he said he wanted to get back to the basics.
As I became well-known through Squid Game, I felt like I was losing control even at my age. The offer for the play came, and I believe this was a good chance for me to find self-restraint and be motivated to focus back on the theater again.
He used to play the role of Austrian psychologist Sigmund Freud in the play Last Session, a duo drama centered around the atheist Freud and theist C.S. Lewis's heated debate on God and religion. Filled with so many abstract and symbolic terms, he says memorizing lines is sometimes demanding, but says it is good to see how the play delivers the meaning of life through old but skilled actors' voices.
I feel like plays, movies, and TV shows are mainly about incidents rather than our life. A person's later years is a necessary part of life. But as most shows do not try to show life, a lot of elderly actors are losing opportunities on stage. I hope more senior actors will be presented through movies or plays that show the beauty of a person's later years.
Having played around 200 different characters on stage, he underlined the importance of following one's own dreams without any doubts during an additional personal interview.
Why wouldn't I have had my twists and turns while working as an actor for more than 50 years? There were times when I struggled and floundered. What I like to say is do what you want to do with confidence.
Staying true to one's beliefs and remaining balanced may be a difficult challenge, especially when faced with a huge tide of change. Hoping he will be remembered as an actor who stuck to his own path, Oh says he will continue to do his best until his last role. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Days after a swarm of tornadoes ripped through the U.S. state of Kentucky, authorities are still searching for survivors. According to officials, at least 100 people are feared dead in Kentucky alone as tornadoes demolished homes and businesses in the U.S. Midwest and South over the weekend. More than 30 tornadoes have been reported in at least 6 states, with Kentucky and Arkansas getting the worst of the wave of tornadoes.
Responding to the worst tornado event in the history of our Commonwealth. Our state was hit by at least 4 tornadoes. Thousands of homes are damaged, if not entirely destroyed, and it may be weeks before we have final counts on both deaths and levels of destruction.
President Joe Biden on Saturday approved an emergency declaration for the state of Kentucky as he called the latest disaster one of the largest tornado outbreak in U.S. history. Football fans tuning in for the Champions League round of 16 draw found themselves scratching their heads as UEFA was forced to redo its initial draw. The first draw for the knockout phase included a dream matchup between Manchester United and Paris Saint-Germain, which would have seen Cristiano Ronaldo facing Lionel Messi. However, the draw was scratched due to errors that UEFA blamed on third-party software. According to tournament rules, teams from the same group and country are not permitted to face one another, but the software apparently failed. A redo finally took place 3 hours after the initial draw, before UEFA Deputy General Secretary Giorgio Marchetti apologized for the error. Despite some clubs calling for the initial draw to stand due to a much more favorable opposition, pundits say an unprecedented redraw was inevitable. The 70th Miss Universe pageant saw India's Harnaz Sandhu being crowned the latest Miss Universe, beating out Miss Paraguay for the title. Celebrations broke out in India's northern city of Chandigarh, the hometown of the 2021 Miss Universe.
She's made me and the entire family proud. The Sandhu family is very proud. I'm unable to handle my happiness, unable to think. My eyes are also watery and many things are going on in my mind, which are very difficult for me to express.
Sandhu's victory brings the crown to India after 21 years. During her acceptance speech, she urged people around the world to get vaccinated to help keep borders open. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
We were able to organize this contest.
Projects to better promote awareness about Korean culture are taking place beyond national borders. One campaign involved an advertisement of a digital fashion show of Korea's traditional attire hanbok and a promotional video, that is, of the Korean folk song Arirang on a large display board in Times Square over in New York. Well, efforts to boost such awareness are happening here in Seoul as well, and our Chun Song-cho is there on site. Song-cho, welcome.
Good afternoon, Sunny.
So, Song-cho, where are you exactly?
Well, right now I'm right outside the Insadong Tourist Information Center in Insadong, feeling inappropriately dressed right now because of how beautiful this Hanok-style building is behind me. I mean, look at this building. Isn't it just gorgeous? I feel like I have to change to hanbok right away, Korean traditional dress. Well, the thing is, here in Insadong, it's quite a common scene to see people dressed in hanbok, walking around and taking pictures, because hanbok is no longer a thing of the past anymore. Well, you see now hanbok being embraced by K-pop stars and adapted by innovative designers all around the world. And also, to give you a bit of an introduction to the area where I'm currently at, Insadong is a very buzzy neighborhood in northern Seoul. It's a must-visit destination, especially for first-timers in South Korea's capital. It's full of culture, with all the traditional tea houses and street food scene. It's also just a walking distance from museums and royal residences. It's got tons of things to do here that sometimes you could get a little bit distracted and confused, not knowing what you should do or where to go. And that is why this Insadong Tourist Information Center is, to help you and to guide you every nook and cranny of the area. So without further ado, let's get inside. But before we step in, I want to take a moment to appreciate this architecture once again. I mean, it's got this little garden over here. It's a truly hidden gem in this concrete jungle. And it's got all the features that Hanok has. For instance, you see kiwa on the roof, right? Roof tiles. And also, this is called toga, well, toma. Well, this is the edge of the Hanok's curved roofs. And it's got all the wooden beams on the windows and doors. It's got even a traditional metal doorknob. So this is very gorgeous indeed. So once we step inside, of course, you have to follow this public health and safety protocols. Get your body temperature checked over here, and then provide your QR code, and then sanitize your hands. I already did sanitize mine, so don't worry. And take a look here. Wow. I mean, I feel like I traveled back in time, or I feel like watching a period Korean drama or movie or something. I'm pretty sure you've seen this scene somewhere, somehow. I mean, usually like high-class, ruling-class aristocrats sits right in the middle on this traditional sitting cushions, right? Talking to other members of the family. And then the pyeongpung in the background is really gorgeous too. Traditional Korean drawings. This is just really gorgeous. I feel like you have to take a picture. And then you see hanbok right here. So let's talk to an official and ask some questions. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so I heard that you can try all of these hanbok here. Is that true?
Yeah, experience of hanbok is available here. Today, I want to introduce 4 different hanbok.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. The first 2 are for the royal court.
Right.
Yeah. This one is the queen's costume.
I saw this a lot in period Korean dramas and movies.
Yeah, this one is the combination of chima and jogori.
Right, so this is for like queens, right?
Yeah, okay. Which means skirt and upper garment. And it goes with the wig.
Oh, yes, it looks
like
very
this.
familiar. Okay. Oh, and this is quite heavy too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then this is the king's costume.
Oh, wow. Looks very regal.
So,
wow.
second to last king of Joseon Dynasty,
Okay.
Gojong, well, this one. and it goes with the hat. Oh, the one over here. Okay. Yeah, I've seen this a lot too, right? And then the rest of the two are not for royal, but for special class. This is for the nobleman. Yangban.
This flower prints.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one goes with the hat. 정자반.
Oh, so this is like the aristocrat look, 양반 look, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This one is for the entertainer, 기생.
Oh, 기생, entertainer.
Yeah. It goes with the hat.
Okay. This is so pretty. Look at this. If I try it on. How do I look? All right. Thank you so much for all the introductions. So, and then also I see that you're wearing this, a piece of hanbok right now. And I heard that the center is the first one in the country to make a piece of hanbok as uniform for all the workers. Is that true as well?
Yeah. This is not the modified one, but beja, a kind of a traditional one. Insadong is one of the most famous tourist attractions in Korea, both among Koreans and foreigners. So we want to introduce our culture wearing hanbok and give a chance to try it.
Oh, that's such a good idea. Thank you so much for your answers this afternoon. Thank you. All right, so this center is open every day from 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. on weekdays and from 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the weekends. It also provides information, interpretation services for tourists, and also it provides free internet access. So if you ever feel lost in Insadong, this is the place to be. This has been Chun Sung-cho reporting live from Insadong, and back to Sun in the studio.
All right, Sung-cho, as always, thank you very much for that report. Economic cooperation and regional integration. Now, these are the keywords within the new order of global trade as the world looks to usher in a series of multilateral trade deals. For more, I have Professor Yang Jun-seok from the Catholic University of Korea. It's good to see you again, Professor Yang.
Happy to be here.
I also have Professor Oh Jun-seok from Sookmyung Women's University. Welcome back, Professor Oh.
Thank you for having me.
Meanwhile, joining this session virtually is Professor Renee Bowen at the University of California, San Diego. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Professor Bowen.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Yang, we'll start here then. Let's begin with a few words on the importance of multilateral trade deals for export-driven countries like Korea.
Well, Korea is said to be a country that's rich with high-quality labor, but also with virtually no natural resources. So that makes Korea not only export-dependent, but also import-dependent. If you want to consume, if you want to invest, then we have to import raw material and intermediate goods from abroad. So what these multilateral trade deals do is it not only opens up the export markets, but it also makes imports of these crucial components cheaper. So Korea not only can be more competitive in the foreign markets, but it can also make purchasing power of Korean consumers better and investment for Korean firms better.
Right, which is why now, Professor Oh, come February, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership will go into effect. Now, do tell us more about this particular partnership and its implications for Korea, Professor
Oh. It will be the advent of mega market starting from next year. RCEP is a kind of the proposal preferential tariff agreement signed by 15 Asia-Pacific countries, 10 member states of ASEAN, plus 5 major largest trade partners, China, Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. And then, as we know, the RCEP aims to cover trade deals in goods and services, and then not to mention of intellectual property. I will summarize 3 points. First, is the world's largest trade deal. What is interesting is, which includes China, but exclude the United States. Think about it. The combined GDP amounts to $26 trillion, and trade volume is $5.6 trillion, and backed by a population of 2.27 billion people. It's a huge market. Without the governance of the United States. The RCEP will involve 30% of the world economy and population. And second, a major benefit of RCEP will be the rules-based trading system, getting out of hodgepodge of trade or bilateral trade war against each other. Regional trade agreement like RCEP might be an important signal at a time when the global rule-based order is under attack. By establishing this kind of unified regulation and international trade, transparency, and then trade facilitation will gain global support and then have power to implement. And the last is, it will be the first multinational FTA, including members Korea, Japan, and China altogether. So for Korea, it will be the materialized successful case of new Southern trade policy, and it will take place of bilateral FTA between Korea and Japan. What worries is that the status of China, by the way, whether China can take the RCEP standard in reality or not.
Right. Now, Professor Yang, I understand talks to set up this major trading bloc itself started back in 2012, but it wasn't until 2019 that notable progress was made. Please explain this for us.
Okay, well, back in 2012, there were two large multilateral FTAs which were being pursued. One was the RCEP, the other was Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. It was widely seen, though perhaps a bit mistaken, that RCEP was being led by China and TPP was led by the United States. So it was a competition to see who would get the lead in the economic sphere in Asia and Pacific. Now, in the beginning, as the negotiations for both started out, it was sort of a competition. But then for RCEP, because it included more developing countries than TPP, the negotiation process slowed down. But then when TPP was nearing completion under the Obama administration, the negotiations for RCEP started picking up. And then when the TPP fell apart because President Trump decided he didn't want to join the TPP, it seemed like the RCEP negotiation was slowed down, but because President Trump was so protectionist, that I think that spurred the RCEP members to try to finish the RCEP negotiation. China, because they were facing a trade war with the United States, and the other countries because, well, they wanted to have a counterbalance to President Trump's protectionism. So the negotiations started really accelerating around that time, and that's the main reason why they finished the negotiation in 2019. But after the President Trump was replaced by President Biden, perhaps the negotiations were complete, but the need to pass the RCEP in the national assemblies became perhaps a bit less urgent. So the negotiation was finished in 2019, but the necessarily passage in the country's national assemblies only was completed last year, and that's why it's taking, it's being implemented now.
Right. Professor Bowen, speaking within your capacity as a White House economic advisor now, what are the potential implications of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership for the U.S. and amid, that is, its tensions with China?
So just to clarify, I'm no longer at the White House, and so I don't speak for the administration by any means, but I do certainly have a sense of what is going on here, you know, in my capacity as a professor of economics studying international agreements. And just to reflect a little bit about what this probably means for the United States and the administration, is the reality is they're still very focused on how they can develop their relationships with the Indo-Pacific in a way that's really broadening the scope for international integration in new areas, such as e-commerce, such as labor standards, such as environmental standards. So RCEP is clearly of interest to those like myself who watch trade agreements. But in terms of the sorts of agreements that we might expect to see the United States being more engaged with, these will have a different focus, I would say, from RCEP.
Right. And Professor Bowen, then, speaking within your capacity as a scholar in the field, do you believe this regional trade deal will offer China perhaps a greater opportunity to expand its reach over the global economy?
Right. So, again, this is an interesting point, given that this is with primarily Asian countries, and ASEAN was already a trading bloc. And what RCEP does is really expand ASEAN, if you would, to include China, now South Korea. And it essentially will, if anything, divert a bit of trade from ASEAN countries to China. And so much of the activity is within the Indo-Pacific, not so much affecting the remaining countries outside of the Indo-Pacific. And given that China already has quite reach within these countries, it's not expected that it will so much broaden China's reach outside of the Asia-Pacific.
I see. Very briefly speaking then, Professor Bowen, generally speaking, what would be the impact of this regional partnership on the global trade order, so to speak?
Right. So I think it's still fairly well accepted that the World Trade Organization, even with all its flaws that people are working on, is still very much the model for what the global trading system is. If anything, if we're thinking about movements in the global trading system overall, we might expect to see that coming out of the World Trade Organization. Yes, there are different regional trading agreements that are being discussed. And these different regional trading agreements will bring in new provisions that we might expect to see being reflected at the WTO. So, for example, the WTO has become more and more concerned with environmental standards. They recently concluded a services agreement. So the sorts of things we expect to see influencing the global trading regime are the kinds of agreements that are in new areas, emerging areas, such as services, such as e-commerce, and not necessarily traditional markets, such as manufacturing.
Right. Meanwhile, Professor, what would be the economic gains and perhaps losses for Korea under this trade partnership?
Might be a benefit might be very clear for the Korean economy. Think about it. It is the world's largest huge FTA, taking 30% of the global economy, and then 91% of RCEP will be open. 91% of RCEP market will be open to the members. Definitely, for Korean companies gain accessibility to the large market, and then Korean companies will get advantage of increasing their operational efficiency of global value chain. And then not to mention all the multinational companies, global startups or global entrepreneurship make good use of online business linked with the huge market potentiality. But as Sonny mentioned, it will be, however, unavoidable burden politically. A Korean market will be exposed to in-depth global competition, which is prone to raise issues of social tension or the argument of income inequality and then wealth polarization. And then another thing to pay the price is the deferred cost of structural reformation might be paid from now on. Less competitive sectors of industry like agriculture cannot be protected and then supported by subsidy or by trade barriers. And one thing we have to worry about is the role of the government. I'll say would undermine the government's efforts to safeguard the right to regulate in the public interest also. So might be the role of government might be weakened as time goes.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Professor Yang, another key economic treaty here in this part of the world is the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement, that is, for Trans-Pacific Partnership, for which Korea is hoping to join. Tell us a bit about this trade deal and Korea's recent reasons, perhaps, for seeking to join it.
Okay, well, this CPTPP is what's left over after TPP did not go through because the United States decided not to join. Now, TPP is a regional trading agreement with 11 countries in the Pacific region. The difference with RCEP is that RCEP is all Asian countries, while the CPTPP includes some of the RCEP countries as well, but it also includes some American countries like Mexico, Canada, and Peru. Now, the ground for TPP was set up right after the Korea-US Chorus FTA, and actually Korea was invited to join in the initial exploration of TPP, but Korea decided not to join because Korea had such a tough time passing the Chorus FTA domestically that it didn't want to get into another major negotiation so quickly. And then as time went by and TPP was making progress, Korea did send signals toward the last year of negotiation for TPP that perhaps Korea wanted to join as well. But at that stage, the TPP negotiations with the 12 countries, including the United States, thought that if they allowed new countries to join, it would delay negotiations too much. So Korea, in that case, was rebuffed. And then, as President Trump decided not to let U.S. go into TPP, the other countries decided to form CPTPP, and that's where we are right now. Korea, because if Korea wanted to join CPTPP, it would have to open agricultural markets and service markets in addition to where it is right now with RCEP. Korea was a bit reluctant to join until about a year ago. Now, that's when there were a lot of speculation among international relations experts that to counter Chinese influence in the Asian region, U.S. may rejoin the CPTPP, and Korea wanted to join the CPTPP before the U.S. rejoined. But now it seems that the U.S. does not have internal political support to join the CPTPP. So President Biden has said that for now, U.S. is not considering joining the CPTPP. But in the meantime, as it was pointed out in the last story, UK, China, Taiwan, they have all applied to join to CPTPP, and Korea has also expressed interest as well. So it is starting to formally negotiate for accession into CPTPP.
Right. And staying with what Professor Yang has just said, Professor Bowen, the Biden administration, for its part, really does not appear to be in any rush to rejoin this Trans-Pacific trade deal from which Mr. Trump pulled out of back in 2017. Could you explain this stance for us?
Right. So I think the first thing to note is that it's generally a bipartisan consensus that now is not the time to really re-engage with CPTPP. And it's not to say that the United States is not interested in re-engaging with these countries or re-engaging with the Indo-Pacific. In the United States, getting a trade agreement signed and into force requires Congress to be on board. In order to do that, the best way is for the president to have trade promotion authority, which has to be agreed to by Congress. Clearly, there is a lot of work on the agenda for the administration right now. So getting the administration's current priorities going is really ahead in the queue versus getting something like Trade Promotion Authority passed. So it's not even a matter of an unwillingness. It's simply very unlikely and impractical to think about Trade Promotion Authority being given to the president anytime soon. And again, this is not necessarily a Democratic or Republican issue. This is really coming from voters. Voters are the ones that are influencing their members of Congress, and it's members of Congress that will have difficulty passing Trade Promotion Authority. The main vehicle through which I understand the Biden administration will be engaging in the Indo-Pacific is through the Indo-Pacific Economic framework. And it's through this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework that they'll be discussing their priorities for trade in the region.
So that is their strategy at the moment then?
So again, I don't speak for the Biden administration.
But that seems to be the strategy then.
That seems to be the strategy.
Right. Point taken, Professor Owen. Professor O, here in the studio then, what looks to be the economic impact for Korea under this trade arrangement?
As it benefits of CPTPP, let's not talk about the widening opportunity, market accessibility, but there is a very unique benefit of CPTPP. That is kind of market diversification effect. A new market with new product could be possible when Korea enters into CPTPP. And then the second one is that it has a similar effect of signing FTA with Japan and Mexico because we have no bilateral FTA with Japan or with Mexico, but by entering the CPTPP, we can make this kind of regional agreement as well. And then one thing we have to remember is the accumulation system of certificate of origin in CPTPP. It might be very valuable for Korean companies, small and medium companies producing raw materials, components, parts, or intermediary goods to give them kind of chances to export increase by participating in the GVC on the CPP. But there is a risk. CPTPP requires a higher level of market openness, almost up to 100%. And one thing I may call it is a Japan risk. As Professor Yang commented, under CPTPP, Japan has a kind of governance power and then have an influence on the decision-making processes among CPTPP members. So it might be an ill effect afterward, I might say.
Oh, I see. So there's still quite a number of issues that need to be worked out. All right, Professor O, thank you very much for your thoughts. Professor Yang, as always, thank you for being with us today. Professor Bowen, that is, thank you very much for your insights today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of this edition. We'll be back with more coverage on Wednesday. Join us then. Thank you for now.
지겨운가요? 힘든가요? 숨이 턱까지 찼나요? 모두가 최선을 다하고 있는 이 힘든 시기에도 분명 끝은 있을 테니까. 대한민국 모두가 다시 힘낼 수 있도록 한수원의 에너지는 멈추지 않습니다. 대한민국 에너지 업. 한국수력 원자력.